American Tobacco South Africa was in court today in Cape Town, challenging, along with 9 others, the constitutionality of the tobacco sales ban, in place, of course, since our lockdown began in March. Well, I'm joined now by Michael Evans, partner and head of public law at Webber Wentzel. He's the legal representative for British American Tobacco South Africa. Good evening, and thank you so much for your time. I'm wondering if you could just explain to us how different is the BAT challenge to the tobacco sales ban compared to the FETA challenge, which we know was not successful, and they are going to appeal.
Yeah, good evening, Sally. It is a very different case that we're bringing to the one that they brought. Our principal focus is on the constitutional arguments, and we've said that the regulation prohibiting the sale of tobacco infringes a number of constitutional rights, including the rights to dignity, to privacy, to bodily and psychological integrity, the right to freedom of trade, the right to property. And what we have said is that it infringes those rights, and it's up to the minister then to try and justify the limitation of those rights. And she frankly cannot do so. When we weigh up the pros and cons of the ban, what we have done is we've looked at the minister's own figures, and we have said that on her own version, and the main aim of this whole tobacco ban is to stop people from smoking, and therefore by stopping smoking, limit the pressure on the health system. And on her own version at any one point in time, we've said that she is saving 16 ICU beds out of about 3,300 in the country. So that's the plus side for the minister. On the negative side, you have this massive impact on the tobacco trade throughout the country, from the farming community right down through the manufacturers and to the retailers. And we're not just talking about the big players, we're talking about small players as well. You've had the massive boost that she's given to the illicit trade by banning the sale of tobacco products. You've cost the fiscus over 4 billion rand, and that's a figure coming from their side, from the minister's side, not from our side. And you can imagine what could be done with 4 billion rand in terms of hospitals and ventilators and everything else. And you've deprived consumers, and there are about 8 million consumers in South Africa, of the right to smoke during this period. So when we weigh up those costs and benefits, it is absolutely clear that this ban is completely absurd. And it's really not surprising at all that we are the only country in the world that has a ban on the sale of tobacco products as a result of the COVID crisis. Botswana used to, and a month ago Botswana lifted the ban. We are now the only one.
I wonder if you could talk to us about the letter presented in court today, signed, it seems, by Gauteng Health, and it seemed to be a letter allowing 50 cartons of cigarettes to be transported to SADAG, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. They have a treatment centre with the aim of allowing these cigarettes to be used for treatment, in other words, to calm people's nerves. Just explain that letter, how it came to be in your possession, and why it's significant.
Well, I received that letter from a retailer. I can't say which retailer it was because they refused to sell the cigarettes because it was illegal. But what it highlights is a kind of completely different approach within government. And even the Gauteng Department of Health, not another department, was prepared to break the law and to purchase cartons of cigarettes because they recognized the benefit of cigarettes for people who in a psychological difficult situation or a mentally damaged situation where cigarettes play a sort of comforting role. And we just attached that letter just to show that it can be used in a beneficial way, as this was. And it also showed that different arms of government are approaching this very differently. And one arm of government, Department of Health in Gauteng, was prepared to defy the law and purchase 60 cartons of cigarettes.
It's also very interesting because, if I'm not mistaken, that was part of FETA's argument, that for some, cigarettes are essential. For some, cigarettes are a form of treatment. So this might be something that works in their case.
Yes, well, we didn't argue the essential issue because we're only looking at the ban as it stands now, and that issue has really fallen away. But it may be something that they would be able to use in their case. They're still pursuing it. It's not a key, I must say, it's not a key element to our case. The main argument is the one that I was highlighting earlier.
The issue of the science, you know, we know that the evidence is inconclusive, and we also know that in the FETA case, essentially what was decided is let's follow the precautionary principle. If you're not sure whether smoking can worsen your condition if you contract COVID-19, let's just leave it out. And I think that is potentially why the court ruled in FETA's favour. Why do you think that you're going to have a different outcome?
Well, the FETA case was argued principally on the basis of rationality, and they argued the irrationality of the step. Now, for the state, crossing the rationality threshold is a very easy one to cross, or it's a very low threshold to cross. We've said they have a much higher threshold to cross. The one is the constitutional one, which I've already mentioned. And the other we've said is that in terms of the law, it has to be strictly necessary. And to achieve that, the minister can't rely on speculative notion that it may contribute to a worse form of COVID if you are a smoker. She has to show definitively that that is the case, and she's not really able to do that. It's still largely speculative at the moment. And for her to cross the thresholds which we've stipulated, which are much higher than the rationality threshold, she's got to achieve a lot more than she's managed to achieve up till now.
Well, thank you very much for your views. Of course, this issue back in court in Cape Town tomorrow. We'll be hearing from government. Michael Evans, their partner at Webber Wentzel, also the legal rep for British American Tobacco.